Welcome back, everybody. It's the end of a very busy month of November in racing, and certainly I think I should start this video out because we are going to talk about the crash in this video that I am so very thankful that Roman Grosjean is still with us and was able to walk away from, quite frankly, one of the worst crashes I've ever seen, particularly in the modern era where we are just not used to violence like we saw there. Again, just a miracle. I think my brother said to me when he saw the wreck that it was a wreck that even with modern safety standards, 7 out of 10 times, he probably doesn't walk away from it. So, and it's amazing from the perspective of what we had talked about in the previous week, specifically that Grosjean's Formula One career is winding down, coming to an end, and he's likely headed to IndyCar next year with AJ Foyt Racing. And then also couple that with the video I made about IndyCar racing, which was the "and they walked away" video. And Grosjean goes out and has perhaps the all-time "and they walked away" accident. Just amazing. What's also amazing, but certainly for very, very different reasons, is the fact that Audi Sport announced today that they are returning to sports car racing, which, if you know anything about sports car racing, and don't worry, we will talk about things in a much more normie way when talking about Audi Sport, but they are the best of the best. In the modern era of sports car racing, they are the top dog, top-of-the-line manufacturer, and so with them committing to the LMDH program, it really means a very important step in the future of sports car racing, and we'll talk about that. So let's get into the video, and first we need to talk about what's happening at Haas F1. So I'm sure you guys have all seen it at this point. Roman Grosjean, just one of the most awful accidents I've ever seen on lap 1 of the Bahrain Grand Prix, making contact with Daniel Kvyat and throwing the car headfirst into a guardrail where not only the car split the guardrail in half, but the guardrail split the car in half, subsequently rupturing the fuel tank and creating an incredible inferno. You've got to thank all of the first responders, the safety workers, everyone in the medical car, and certainly the safety features on Grosjean's Haas F1 car. Just a miracle. Is the only real word you can have to describe this, that Roman Grosjean was able to walk away from this one. While he does have some pretty serious burns, he is currently in the hospital but expected to make a full recovery, and just again flabbergasted with that particular result. Now, it was announced today that he will be replaced, at least for the next Bahrain race in the doubleheader, by Pietro Fittipaldi, who's one of the reserve drivers for the Haas F1 team. And, of course, American racing fans will be very familiar with Pietro, as he raced for Dale Coyne Racing throughout the 2018 IndyCar season. Now, he missed the Indianapolis 500 and some of the more important races because he suffered some leg injuries, which really kind of paused his career at Spa in a World Endurance Championship race. But I think this is a great opportunity for Pietro. A lot of people are very high on him, despite the fact that he really doesn't have a ton of experience, at least from what I saw in the United States when he was racing here. He certainly has the talent level. It will be interesting to see how he's able to get on with Haas F1. So again, I want to go back to the Grosjean accident, because certainly I think we all, when we saw the halo for the first time, said, what the hell is that, and what is it doing on an open wheel race car? But if that wasn't the real test of it, I don't know what is. The fact that while, yes, there have been drivers that have survived crashes where the car has actually gone through the guardrail before. I think there's a famous photo of, I think it's, it might be Denny Holm. I believe it's a driver in a McLaren car. I can't remember exactly. I'll try to put the photo up on the screen, but actually wedged in between two sections of guardrail at the Monaco Grand Prix. There was another crash, ironically, in IndyCar. It's one of the ones that I'm actually considering putting in the sequel to "And They Walked Away" IndyCar edition, where Bobby Unser actually went underneath a guardrail at Phoenix, I believe it was, and walked away from that one. So while I think a lot of people are very, very right to invoke the crashes of Francois Sever and Helmut Koenig, or what I can't remember his specific name, but I think it's Koenig, who was actually decapitated by a guardrail at Watkins Glen. I mean, this kind of accident usually goes one of two ways: either the driver miraculously survives or they get killed. And I definitely think, while absolutely all of the safety equipment saved Grosjean, and that includes the halo, the crash testing of the race car itself, the fire response, the Nomex racing suit that Grosjean was wearing. If for any reason he had been knocked out, or if that car goes into the guardrail at a different angle, I mean, at least from the placement of the race car in the guardrail, it was on its side, so the cockpit was aimed away from the actual metal part itself. And I'll be very interested to see when the investigation comes out about this crash, if or how much of a factor in deflection did the halo have. I've seen a few diagrams that are, I would say, I wouldn't necessarily say they're 100% speculative, but obviously we don't know for sure until there's a full crash investigation of how much of an effect the halo had, or how much this was dumb luck that Grosjean just simply was not trapped in the car. But I think it's very encouraging as well that the top portion of the cockpit where the driver actually exits was fairly unobstructed once they got the fire out. And that's the other thing. Again, if he'd been knocked out, I mean, we're talking about, I mean, how long can a driver survive in a fire? I think it's been said that he was in there for like 13 seconds. Just everything, while it went wrong, no doubt about it, also went right. Now, I've seen a lot of people talking about Armco barriers on the track. I think the real issue was more with the angle of that particular wall than the construction of the barrier itself. Because while I think a lot of people are right to criticize the Armco, the talk of tire walls makes me think immediately back to Antoine Hubert, with where he had his massive accident at Spa, and actually the tire barrier shot him back into oncoming traffic, and that's where the fatal impact was had. So while I think Grosjean was very lucky that this happened at the back of the pack and there weren't more cars that could have possibly gotten involved in it, had there been a tire barrier there. If there had been a tire barrier there, who knows what might have happened with the car, or if there's a similar accident in the future. I think it's just, my point is, I think it would be a better solution to move that opening in the wall somewhere less high speed. I think it said something, I remember seeing something like it was a 50G impact at 137 miles an hour or something like that. Just crazy stuff. I want to talk a little bit about Pietro Fittipaldi. Actually, the first thing before I talk about Pietro was some people have talked about Grosjean and his IndyCar prospects going forward. I think he's still probably going to do it. Now, I could be totally wrong, but race car drivers think a different way than we do. And if Grosjean was really having second thoughts about his racing career, he probably wouldn't be looking into IndyCar. And if anything, he may have realized that, hey, you can have a really serious crash without being on an oval, much less being on oval. Now, that, of course, could go both ways. But, in my conversations with race car drivers, even ones that have had really serious accidents, it doesn't seem like they really think about that very much. Or at least if they think about it, they just, they accept the risks. Now, would I be 100% surprised if Grosjean hangs it up after this? No, but at the same time, I feel like he's probably going to make a comeback. Race car drivers generally don't want to end their careers on those kind of accidents if they can avoid it. Pietro Fittipaldi, another driver who, again, recovered from injuries, suffered at Spa, to come back, and clearly he's getting his Formula One opportunity here. Now, my question is, Haas still hasn't announced their drivers as far as I know for next year, though I think there's a lot of rumors about especially Mick Schumacher going into that team. I wonder if Pietro's working for a job here, or if this is just simply an evaluation to see if he's good enough to keep on at least as a test driver for next year. I've actually I don't think I've seen it from any credible sources, so don't quote me as this being credible, but I had seen Pietro's name thrown out there a couple of times as potentially a Dale Coyne driver for IndyCar next year. So maybe that's a place he could go. I know he's run there in IndyCar before, but if you've gotten this close to Formula One, I imagine he's probably going to stick around for at least another year or two, especially if he impresses. And that's going to be the interesting thing to see. If he takes this like a duck to water, what is Gene Haas and Gunther Steiner going to do? Who knows? And an absolutely amazing bombshell dropped this morning that Audi is leaving Formula E at the end of the 2021 season, and they are pursuing an LMDH and Dakar program for 2022. Now, we are going to talk specifically about the LMDH program in this video. Certainly, I'm sure there's long-distance endurance dirt racing fans who can tell you about Audi's prospects at Dakar. But the LMDH platform, this is the first major manufacturer to fully commit to this particular program, which I'll explain in a bit, is an absolutely fantastic thing for sports car racing. World Endurance Championship is set to introduce these cars in 2022. Now, the LMH hypercars are starting next year, 2021, at the 1,000 miles of Sebring. So the hypercars, which will include Peugeot and Toyota and Glickenhaus and a few other manufacturers, will have a year head start on these particular cars. They will also race in IMSA starting in 2023. IMSA pushed that back because of the pandemic. But again, from a hypercar, LMH, LMDH convergence, this is incredible and good news. And here's why. The very simple fact is, without a major manufacturer, particularly one with strong European ties, there was a potential, because we've seen it in the past, it happened with DPI. Originally, Daytona Prototype International, which is currently the top class in IMSA, was supposed to be able to run the 24 Hours of Le Mans in the LMP2 category. Now, that idea was eventually nixed for political reasons. This time, I don't think they will be able to go back on their promise to allow LMDH cars to race against the LMH cars, at least at Le Mans. And I would hope that they would also be able to race full-time in the World Endurance Championship, ditto for LMH cars being able to run in IMSA. If you're going to do prototype conversions, you really need to do it right, which means all cars can compete on all tracks. The fact that Audi committed to the IMSA-style formula virtually guarantees that LMDH cars, will have an opportunity to at least go to Le Mans and almost certainly compete full-time in the World Endurance Championship in addition to IMSA. There ain't no way the FIA is going to tell Audi to go pound sand when they already have the potential storyline of having Toyota versus Audi again and Peugeot versus Audi again. The two major kind of conflicts that we had seen in sports car racing kind of during the golden ages, which would be the LMH hybrid cars as well as the kind of 2007 to 2009 and 11, or 2007 to 2011 battles between Audi and Peugeot. Throw in the mix that apparently Porsche is likely going to commit to LMDH as well. We've heard that Penske is attached to that program. We'll have to see if that actually happens. I certainly hope it does. Penske, Porsche, and potentially a Yost Racing Audi. We're starting to get right back to kind of the glory days of 2008 ALMS, which to me was the thing that got me into sports car racing. So if you're talking about buying or selling racing series right now, buy sports car racing. Get into it right now, because if you look, there's a lot of different entities hedging their bets. We have a pretty good idea that Acura is going to commit to this formula going forward. There's a pretty good reason, I will just say that Ganassi has come back into the IMSA fold. They've got their sports car team back up and running. There's a lot of people getting ready for this regulation change. And then obviously throw in the World Championship teams like Toyota committing, Glickenhaus, Baikalas, Peugeot coming in, starting in 2022. This is all really exciting news for sports car racing. And excitement is something that Audi racing programs really haven't had since they left LMP1. And while I don't mean for this to be like a personal slam against Formula E, I think it's very telling when you hear things that are announced for Formula E, and it's almost like a tree falling in the forest. But the announcement that not only was Audi leaving Formula E, but they're going back to their roots and doing something that everybody kind of knows them for, at least in the racing community. The outcry and the excitement and the hype was immediate. So from that perspective, I think Formula E's got a long way to go in terms of achieving relevancy, at least in the racing sense of the word. Certainly the manufacturers care about it. That's why it exists. But beyond that, they got a long way to go. And every time I see a clickbaity article that like they're going to overtake Formula One in 10 years, okay, right, okay. I'm just going to pat Junior on the head and send him on his way, because it's just like it's hard to like address a point like that because it's sometimes weird. But this is a very concrete kind of thing. Like, okay, everybody's hyped about them going to Le Mans, and I don't think there were that many people hyped, and in fact, I would probably say they were the opposite when it was announced that Audi was going to Formula E. But getting back to sports car racing, again, Audi being involved in any capacity is fantastic. Hopefully, this program is similar to their previous ones, where at the very least there's a very strong factory team, maybe some customer teams. Maybe they split between the United States, have a Audi Sport North America team, and go globally in the World Endurance Championship and have an Audi Sport Team Yost or whatever like they used to, and have Audis racing all over the world. Certainly it helps that this is a cheaper formula. Remember that LMDH is going to be using the LMP2 chassis, so it's going to be very similar to DPI. I would imagine they'll work with Dallara, which currently builds the Cadillacs, in IMSA. And I believe they built virtually all of the Audi LMP chassis before that. So there's a history there. That's probably the chassis manufacturer I would expect them to go with. Fun times. Sports car racing, honestly, it looks pretty good for next year, believe it or not. Bad economy and everything. And I cannot wait for 2022 and 2023 when we see these cars get integrated into the World Endurance Championship and IMSA, and hopefully some convergence between both of those series, because it could be good for everybody. So thank you guys so much for watching. This has been David Land on YouTube. Subscribe for more motorsport content, and I will see you in the next video.